I say that I met her in AmeriCorps, one of the first school days. She said I met her on the very first day in line. I don't quite remember that, but we were friends with each other because we spent about a month together with other friends, but we were just friends, and we didn't know that we were both applying for this team in Vermont, so it was really a surprise. And we had some other friends that we knew that also applied, so it was really a cool project we were all excited for. There's 300 people, and so this was a team of 12, and so it was just a surprise that, I knew 4 or 5 people that all applied for it, so I don't know, it was surprising. I found out she had a pretty strong evangelical faith, and I kind of knew this from the first month that we were there, and I always like to debate things. So the first thing that I did was just really I was able to question her and get to know why she believed what she believed, and to throw things that I saw that were perhaps incompatible with what I saw as mainstream social Christian thought in our country, and values, and what I thought I remember reading in the New Testament about Christ and his life. And so I began to question her about these things. And I was also at the same time reading a book by Gandhi called Nonviolent Resistance, which is a collection of his writings. And so I was reading to her a bunch of these. It was a passion of mine. And she's like, well, Jesus said that first. Jesus said that first. And she would keep saying all these things. And I was like, oh, really? So we decided to read at night the New Testament together. I never had read the New Testament just willingly on my own. In school I always did, in church you always hear it, but never have I sat down and said I wanted to read the New Testament. So we decided to do that at night. At the same time, we both decided we wanted dreadlocks, or we call locks. And so she would work on my hair, and I would read, and then I would work on her hair, and she would read, and we would take turns. And also, I think we both wanted just to spend quality time with each other as well. So there's probably a little bit of both, but that's kind of the development of a lot of things. It was the first time, and I can't explain it any other way than when I was reading the gospel, words were just making sense. I felt like I described earlier, there was this emptiness that I was feeling before I joined AmeriCorps, and there was a lot of discontent with what I saw in the world and injustice, and that's why I was reading Gandhi, trying to figure out how to solve that. And reading the New Testament and the words of Christ for the first time just kind of seemed to fill in all the gaps and really to make sense. And at the same time, I'm getting to know Jess and her life and how she traveled around the world and all these things, and I'm falling in love with her as well. So I was on a pretty big high, both with my faith and also with Jessie.
Vermont was just the second round of our AmeriCorps time, I guess. And so we had another 2 rounds that we did apart from each other, but we wrote letters and did everything cute, And from there, we had realized how much we enjoyed our experiences. Jordan had a wonderful experience with a Baptist church in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, working with a United Way program there. And after we had done our projects and we came back together at the end of AmeriCorps, they have a debriefing, and we said, gosh, traveling around and volunteering was just the best, but wouldn't it be great to do it for Christ instead of for Uncle Sam? And so we decided that we would do that together.
I think also one thing that was a motivation was that we also realized that I was raised Catholic and had a lot of stereotypes against people of other Christian faiths, like, oh, it's not the one true faith, and there's all these things. And she was raised evangelical and taught a lot of stereotypes about Catholics that just weren't true. And so as we were diving deeper into our Christian faith and realizing that we were both Christians, but just of different faith traditions, begin to think we're kind of in a Christian country, and supposedly, and yet I see all these inconsistencies and all this separation between churches in Hattiesburg, and so part of our mission originally as well was not only to travel around and serve, but also we wanted to visit all these different Christian denominations and to learn more about them and figure out, like, well, what does it mean to be Christian? And the best way that we thought we could do that was by serving that parish or that community in whatever needs they had, while worshiping with them, learning about their faith, and really trying to understand what is dividing us as Christians. So that was an interest, I think, that we had early on. My very next round after Vermont, I had a strong want to participate in a faith community, but I still had some things that I was skeptical with about the Catholic faith. And so I got involved with this Ebenezer Baptist Church, and it was an all African American church, and it just blew my mind, the way they worshipped, talked about the Holy Spirit and the preaching, and just everything was wonderful, and they were so welcoming, and there's just a lot of things going on. And so that really strengthened my faith as a Christian, to kind of re-enter into a faith community and to profess my faith to people beyond just Jessie, I guess. But I wasn't yet ready for my Catholic faith at that time.
After we left AmeriCorps, we went back to Hattiesburg, where Jordan had been in AmeriCorps. We went there and lived with some parishioners of the Ebenezer Baptist Church and worked on a home that was right next to the church, and worked with the United Way program there. And while we were there for like 6 months.
Yeah, like 5 months.
5 months.
How'd we get there?
And, well, we hitchhiked there. And then once we were there and had spent some time with them, we thought it would be great to go to another place and learn about something else. And Jordan, at that time, like he mentioned, he got back into his Catholic faith, and we started going to Mass on Saturday night and then Ebenezer Baptist Church on Sunday morning, which was pretty amazing how different they were. But it was a great experience, one that I cherish. And from Hattiesburg, we found out about Nazareth Farm through a series of events of calling a couple Catholic workers in West Virginia.
We were working on a house in Mississippi, and it was a particularly frustrating day. We were basically teaching ourselves carpentry and remodeling this old house, and so we had some frustrating days, and we decided to take a break and to go to the local state park and kind of recenter ourselves on why we were in Mississippi doing what we were doing, why we were with each other, and why we were doing everything. And we went our ways, and I had a Bible with me, and sometimes when I'm in trouble, I just like open up the Bible to a random page, read the first thing I see, and see if it makes sense to my situation. And I came across Psalm 104, which is just about God's creation and the beauty and the divine wisdom and everything. And for some reason, while I was reading it, it just came to my heart that I needed to propose to Jess and I needed to marry her. So we had not talked about this at all. And so then I spent a good while like talking myself out of it. But I just prayed about it, and I settled on that this is what I needed to do. And so I went and got her, and I took her to where I was praying, and I had her read Psalm 104, and then I asked her if she would marry me, and she said yes. And
I think that in the back of my mind, I was like, Jordan's probably the person I'm going to marry. I really like him and love him and want to spend my life with him, but not right now. Even when he asked me out, I think I said yes, but then I was like, right now? You want to get married right now? I was very surprised. At this point, when we got engaged, we had already started the interview process with Nazareth Farm. And so we called them and said, hey, we're engaged. Hope that's okay. And they were obviously excited for us as well. And so then we had to kind of wait to see if we were going to Nazareth Farm and what our lives would be like there to set a date.
In Psalm 104, it's like God divinely created everything, and everything makes sense in the psalm. Like the waters feed the animals, and the animals die and feed the soil, and there's just all these things that are all flowing together. And what I was thinking was that, you know, what I was doing. Jess was a woman of God. She had her heart where my heart was, and felt the same calling I was feeling, was wanting to, you know, hitchhike across the country with me. We had no money, we really had nothing, but a similar love of God, and how we saw the expression of our faith being service of others. And so to me, like Psalm 104 just translated into that, really, you know, God has divinely planned everything. We don't need to, you know, wait for a long time, or we don't need to wait till we're making a lot of money or have more secure plan ahead, because as long as we have each other and we have our faith, and that's what we need. We got married
June
18th of 2010, and Nathaniel was born
August 7th, 2011. So just a little over a year. I think for me, at least, Nazareth Farm, we were there for almost 3 years, and the community style at Nazareth Farm is not a long-term community. It's more of a year of service volunteer community, and we loved it there. We had our son there at the farmhouse, and we wanted to be there and enjoyed it a lot. But I think we both sort of realized that it comes to a point when you need to go on. And so we had been looking at starting a Catholic worker in Detroit with another person who had left Nazareth Farm and then lived in Detroit. And while we were in that process looking at houses in Detroit, we were contacted by the campus minister of Avila University, who said, "Why don't you come and start a farm in Kansas City?" And we, at the time, thought we were called to Detroit, and so it took a lot of discernment on our part. But then once we came here and met the people involved, we knew we were called to come to Kansas City.
When we left AmeriCorps and started hitchhiking, that was, I think, the closest that I would say that I felt to authentically, like, following God's call. And I like I've mentioned to you and to other people before, that I compare it to, it's not as dramatic as Abraham killing, you know, offering his own son as a sacrifice, being asked to and going forward with it, but then God calling him off of that, and so feeling that, you know, I had to take the leap of faith with Jess, with no prospect of a job, no money, to just step out on the road, put my thumb out and say, where am I going? I'm going to go volunteer. And then where that's led to us to Hattiesburg, living with a couple that had, you know, the husband had post-traumatic stress disorder, and they were African American, so the cultures were a little different, and there's just all these things that were different, but yet it worked because we're all people of faith. And then from there to Nazareth Farm to here, and it's all been this string of coincidences and things that just don't make sense in our society. I would say, like, we're managing a nonprofit, and neither one of us are college graduates, and you know, we hitchhiked, and everyone said, you know, hitchhiking is dangerous, but then everyone picking up hitchhikers says, well, don't pick up because they're dangerous. And it's like, well, where's the community in that? And so for me, the biggest thing that I've learned and what I'm trying to do now, because now I'm just living life. Like, I've gone over that, I've dove in, I guess, is how I see it, into my faith, and now it's like, well, how do I take the things that I've learned and apply them to my day-to-day life? And I think the biggest thing is when I hear that we're free in Christ, or when I hear that God clothes the lilies, like, that we shouldn't limit ourselves. Like, we should find strength in God, and we shouldn't let what society tells us hold us back. I truly believe that we need to pray and to listen to God, but also to act in confidence to do what we think is God's will. So
I agree in a lot of ways with what Jordan said as far as the hitchhiking being a very formative turning point for me as well. But another turning point for me was going to Nazareth Farm and being more introduced to the Catholic faith, because I had my dad's side of the family is Catholic, so I'd gone to Catholic church a couple times with my grandmother, but you don't really know the Catholic faith just by going to Mass a couple times. And being at Nazareth Farm and being around Catholics who were so passionate about justice and the Catholic social teachings and learning what those are, and realizing that my faith as a Christian causes me to work for justice. And I just had an experience at Nazareth Farm where I connected my passion of working for others more solidly with my faith, and how the two were very much one. And that's what led us here by being at Nazareth Farm.